Ronald Wilson Reagan, February 6, 1911 – June 5, 2004, was an American politician and actor who served as the 40th President of the United States from 1981 to 1989. Prior to the presidency, he had a long and distinguished three-decade career as a Hollywood actor and union leader before serving as the 33rd Governor of California from 1967 to 1975. Reagan was raised in a poor family in small towns of northern Illinois. He graduated from Eureka College in 1932 and worked as a sports announcer on several regional radio stations. After moving to Hollywood in 1937, he became an actor and starred in a few major productions. Reagan was twice elected president of the Screen Actors Guild, the labor union for actors where he worked to root out communist influence. In the 1950s, he moved into television and was a motivational speaker at General Electric factories. Reagan had always been a Democrat until 1962, when he became a conservative and switched to the Republican Party. In 1964, Reagan's speech, A Time for Choosing, supported Barry Goldwater's founding presidential campaign and earned him national attention as a new conservative spokesman. Building a network of supporters, he was elected governor of California in 1966. As governor, Reagan raised taxes, turned a state budget deficit to a surplus, challenged the protesters at the University of California, ordered in National Guard troops during a period of protest movements in 1969, and was re-elected in 1970. He twice ran unsuccessfully for the Republican nomination for the U.S. presidency in 1968 and 1976. 4 years later in 1980, he easily won the nomination outright and became the oldest elected U.S. president up to that time, when he defeated incumbent Jimmy Carter in a landslide. Entering the presidency in 1981, Reagan implemented sweeping new political and economic initiatives. His supply-side economic policies, dubbed Reaganomics, advocated tax rate reduction to spur economic growth, economic deregulation, and reduction in government spending. In his first term he survived an assassination attempt, spurred the war on drugs, and fought public sector labor. Over his 2 terms, the economy saw a reduction of inflation from 12.5% to 4.4%, and an average annual growth of real GDP of 3.4%, while Reagan did enact cuts in domestic discretionary spending. Tax cuts and increased military spending contributed to increased federal outlays overall, even after adjustment for inflation. During his re-election bid, Reagan campaigned on the notion that it was morning in America, winning a landslide in 1984 with the largest electoral college victory in American history. Foreign affairs dominated his second term, including ending of the Cold War, the bombing of Libya, and the Iran-Contra affair. Publicly describing the Soviet Union as an evil empire, and during his famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate, President Reagan challenged Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down this wall. He transitioned Cold War policy from détente to rollback by escalating an arms race with the USSR while engaging in talks with Gorbachev. The talks culminated in the INF Treaty, which shrank both countries' nuclear arsenals. Reagan began his presidency during the decline of the Soviet Union, and the Berlin Wall fell just 10 months after the end of his term. Germany reunified the following year, and on December 26, 1991, nearly 3 years after he left office, the Soviet Union collapsed. When Reagan left office in 1989, he held an approval rating of 68%, matching those of Franklin D. Roosevelt, and later Bill Clinton, as the highest ratings for departing presidents in the modern era. He was the first president since Dwight D. Eisenhower to serve 2 full terms, after a succession of 5 prior presidents did not, some under unusual circumstances. Although he had planned an active post-presidency, Reagan disclosed in November 1994 that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease earlier that year. Afterward, his informal public appearances became more infrequent as the disease progressed. He died at home on June 5, 2004. An icon among Republicans, he is viewed favorably in historian rankings of U.S. presidents, and his tenure constituted a realignment toward conservative policies in the United States. Early life. Ronald Wilson Reagan was born on February 6, 1911 in an apartment on the second floor of a commercial building in Tampico, Illinois. He was the younger son of Nell Clyde, née Wilson, 1883–1962, and Jack Reagan, 1883–1941. Jack was a salesman and storyteller whose grandparents were Irish Catholic emigrants from County Tipperary, while Nell was of half English and half Scottish descent. Her mother was born in Surrey. Reagan's older brother, Neil Reagan, 1908–1996, became an advertising executive. Reagan's father nicknamed his son Dutch, due to his fat little Dutchman-like appearance and Dutch boy haircut. The nickname stuck with him throughout his youth. Reagan's family briefly lived in several towns and cities in Illinois, including Monmouth, Galesburg, and Chicago. In 1919, they returned to Tampico and lived above the H.C. Pitney Variety Store until finally settling in Dixon. After his election as president, Reagan resided in the upstairs White House private quarters, and he would quip that he was living above the store again. According to Paul Kengor, author of God and Ronald Reagan, Reagan had a particularly strong faith in the goodness of people. This faith stemmed from the optimistic faith of his mother and the Disciples of Christ faith, into which he was baptized in 1922. For that period of time, which was long before the civil rights movement, Reagan's opposition to racial discrimination was unusual and commendable. He recalled the time in Dixon when the proprietor of a local inn would not allow black people to stay there, and he brought them back to his house. His mother invited them to stay overnight and have breakfast the next morning. After the closure of the Pitney store in 1920 and the family's move to Dixon, the Midwestern small universe had a lasting impression on Reagan. Formal education. Reagan attended Dixon High School, where he developed interests in acting, sports, and storytelling. His first job involved working as a lifeguard at the Rock River in Lowell Park in 1927. Over a 6-year period, Reagan reportedly performed 77 rescues as a lifeguard. He attended Eureka College, a disciples-oriented liberal arts school, where he became a member of the Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity, a cheerleader, and studied economics and sociology. While involved, the Miller Center of Public Affairs described him as an indifferent student. He majored in economics and sociology and graduated with a C grade. He developed a reputation as a jack of all trades, excelling in campus politics, sports, and theater. He was a member of the football team and captain of the swim team. He was elected student body president and led a student revolt against the college president after the president tried to cut back the faculty. Entertainment career. Radio and film. After graduating from Eureka in 1932, Reagan drove to Iowa, where he held jobs as a radio announcer at several stations. He moved to Who Radio in Des Moines as an announcer for Chicago Cubs baseball games. His specialty was creating play-by-play accounts of games using as his source only basic descriptions that the station received by wire as the games were in progress. While traveling with the Cubs in California in 1937, Reagan took a screen test that led to a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers Studios. He spent the first few years of his Hollywood career in the B-film unit, where, Reagan joked, the producers didn't want them good, they wanted them Thursday. He earned his first screen credit with a starring role in the 1937 movie Love Is on the Air, and by the end of 1939 he had already appeared in 19 films, including Dark Victory with Bette Davis and Humphrey Bogart. Before the film Santa Fe Trail with Errol Flynn in 1940, he played the role of George the Jipper Jip in the film Knute Rockne, All-American. From it, he acquired the lifelong nickname the Jipper. In 1941, exhibitors voted him the fifth most popular star from the younger generation in Hollywood. Reagan played his favorite acting role in 1942's King's Row, where he plays a double amputee who recites the line "Where's the rest of me?" later used as the title of his 1965 autobiography. Many film critics considered King's Row to be his best movie, though the film was condemned by New York Times critic Bosley Crowther. Although Reagan called King's Row the film that made me a star, he was unable to capitalize on his success because he was ordered to active duty with the U.S. Army at San Francisco 2 months after its release, and never regained star status in motion pictures. In the post-war era, after being separated from almost 4 years of World War II stateside service with the 1st Motion Picture Unit in December 1945, Reagan co-starred in such films as The Voice of the Turtle, John Loves Mary, The Hasty Heart, Bedtime for Bonzo, Cattle Queen of Montana, Tennessee's Partner, Hellcats of the Navy, the only film in which he appears with Nancy Reagan, and the 1964 remake The Killers, his final film. Throughout his film career, his mother answered much of his fan mail. Like many actors of his generation, Reagan endorsed cigarettes. Military service. After completing 14 home study Army extension courses, Reagan enlisted in the Army Enlisted Reserve and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Officers Reserve Corps of the Cavalry on May 25, 1937. On April 18, 1942, Reagan was ordered to active duty for the first time. Due to his poor eyesight, he was classified for limited service only, which excluded him from serving overseas. His first assignment was at the San Francisco Port of Embarkation at Fort Mason, California, as a liaison officer of the Port and Transportation Office. Upon the approval of the Army Air Forces, AAF, he applied for a transfer from the cavalry to the AAF on May 15, 1942, and was assigned to AAF Public Relations and subsequently to the 1st Motion Picture Unit, officially, the 18th Army Air Force Base Unit, in Culver City, California. On January 14, 1943, he was promoted to First Lieutenant and was sent to the Provisional Task Force Show Unit of This Is the Army at Burbank, California. He returned to the 1st Motion Picture Unit after completing this duty and was promoted to Captain on July 22, 1943. In January 1944, Reagan was ordered to temporary duty in New York City to participate in the opening of the 6th War Loan Drive, which campaigned for the purchase of war bonds. He was reassigned to the 1st Motion Picture Unit on November 14, 1944, where he remained until the end of World War II. He was recommended for promotion to Major on February 2, 1945, but this recommendation was disapproved on July 17 of that year. While with the 1st Motion Picture Unit in 1945, he was indirectly involved in discovering actress Marilyn Monroe. He returned to Fort MacArthur, California, where he was separated from active duty on December 9, 1945. By the end of the war, his units had produced some 400 training films for the AAF. Reagan never left the United States during the war, but he kept a film reel that he obtained while he was in the service. The reel depicted the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp. He believed that doubts would someday arise as to whether the Holocaust had occurred. It has been alleged that he was overheard telling Israeli Foreign Minister Yitzhak Shamir in 1983 that he had filmed that footage himself and helped liberate Auschwitz, though this purported conversation was disputed by Secretary of State George P. Shultz. Screen Actors Guild Presidency. Reagan was first elected to the Board of Directors of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, in 1941, serving as an alternate member. After World War II, he resumed service and became third vice president in 1946. The adoption of conflict of interest bylaws in 1947 led the SAG president and 6 board members to resign. Reagan was nominated in a special election for the position of president and was subsequently elected. He was chosen by the membership to serve 7 additional one-year terms, from 1947 to 1952 and in 1959. Reagan led the SAG through eventful years that were marked by labor management disputes, the Taft-Hartley Act, the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, hearings and the Hollywood blacklist era. Secret FBI informant in Hollywood. During the late 1940s, Reagan and his then-wife, Jane Wyman, provided the FBI with the names of actors within the motion picture industry whom they believed to be communist sympathizers. Though he expressed reservations, he said, "Do they expect us to constitute ourselves as a little FBI of our own and determine just who is a commie and who isn't?" Reagan also testified on the subject before the House Un-American Activities Committee. A fervent anti-communist, he reaffirmed his commitment to democratic principles, stating, "I never as a citizen want to see our country become urged, by either fear or resentment of this group, that we ever compromise with any of our democratic principles through that fear or resentment." Television. Though an early critic of television, Reagan landed fewer film roles in the late 1950s and decided to join the medium. He was hired as the host of General Electric Theater, a series of weekly dramas that became very popular. His contract required him to tour General Electric, GE, plants 16 weeks out of the year, which often demanded that he give 14 speeches per day. He earned approximately $125,000, equivalent to $1011276 in 2017, in this role. The show ran for 10 seasons from 1953 to 1962, which increased Reagan's profile in American households. He had previously appeared in feature films mostly in supporting roles or as a second lead. In his final work as a professional actor, Reagan was a host and performer from 1964 to 1965 on the television series Death Valley Days. Reagan and future wife Nancy Davis appeared together on television several times, including an episode of General Electric Theater in 1958 called A Turkey for the President. Reagan appeared on the panel show What's My Line? Twice, once as a mystery guest in 1953 and as a panelist in 1956. Marriages and Children. In 1938, Reagan co-starred in the film Brother Rat with actress Jane Wyman, 1917-2007. They announced their engagement at the Chicago Theater and married on January 26, 1940 at the Weekirk o' the Heather Church in Glendale, California. Together they had 2 biological children, Maureen, 1941-2001, and Christine, B. in 1947 but lived only 1 day, and adopted a third, Michael, B. 1945. After the couple had arguments about Reagan's political ambitions, Wyman filed for divorce in 1948, citing a distraction due to her husband's Screen Actors Guild union duties. The divorce was finalized in 1949. Wyman, who was a registered Republican, also stated that their breakup was due to a difference in politics. Reagan was still a Democrat at the time. When Reagan became president 32 years later, he had the distinction of being the first divorced person to assume the nation's highest office. Reagan and Wyman continued to be friends until his death, with Wyman voting for Reagan in both of his runs and, upon his death, saying America has lost a great president and a great, kind, and gentle man. Reagan met actress Nancy Davis, 1921-2016, in 1949 after she contacted him in his capacity as president of the Screen Actors Guild. He helped her with issues regarding her name appearing on a communist blacklist in Hollywood. She had been mistaken for another Nancy Davis. She described their meeting by saying, "I don't know if it was exactly love at first sight, but it was pretty close." They were engaged at Chasen's restaurant in Los Angeles and were married on March 4, 1952, at the Little Brown Church in the Valley, North Hollywood, now Studio City, San Fernando Valley. Actor William Holden served as best man at the ceremony. They had 2 children, Patty, b. 1952, and Ronald Ron Jr., b. 1958. Observers described the Reagans' relationship as close, authentic, and intimate. During his presidency, they reportedly displayed frequent affection for one another. One press secretary said, "They never took each other for granted. They never stopped courting. He often called her mommy and she called him Ronnie." He once wrote to her, "Whatever I treasure and enjoy, all would be without meaning if I didn't have you." When he was in the hospital in 1981 after an assassination attempt, she slept with one of his shirts to be comforted by his scent. In a letter to the American people in 1994, Reagan wrote, "I have recently been told that I am one of the millions of Americans who will be afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. I only wish there was some way I could spare Nancy from this painful experience." And in 1998, while he was stricken by Alzheimer's, Nancy told Vanity Fair, "Our relationship is very special. We were very much in love and still are. When I say my life began with Ronnie, well, it's true. It did. I can't imagine life without him." Nancy Reagan died on March 6, 2016 at the age of 94. Early political career. Reagan began as a Hollywood Democrat, and Franklin D. Roosevelt was a true hero to him. He moved to the right wing in the 1950s, became a Republican in 1962, and emerged as a leading conservative spokesman in the Goldwater campaign of 1964. In his early political career, he joined numerous political committees with a left-wing orientation, such as the American Veterans Committee. He fought against Republican-sponsored right-to-work legislation and supported Helena Hagen Douglas in 1950 when she was defeated for the Senate by Richard Nixon. It was his realization that communists were a powerful backstage influence in those groups that led him to rally his friends against them. At rallies, Reagan spoke frequently with a strong ideological dimension. In December 1945, he was stopped from leading an anti-nuclear rally in Hollywood by pressure from the Warner Brothers studio. He would later make nuclear weapons a key point of his presidency when he specifically stated his opposition to mutual assured destruction. Reagan also built on previous efforts to limit the spread of nuclear weapons. In the 1948 presidential election, Reagan strongly supported Harry S. Truman and appeared on stage with him during a campaign speech in Los Angeles. In the early 1950s, his relationship with actress Nancy Davis grew, and he shifted to the right when he endorsed the presidential candidacies of Dwight D. Eisenhower, 1952 and 1956, and Richard Nixon, 1960. Reagan was hired by General Electric, GE, in 1954 to host the General Electric Theater, a weekly TV drama series. He also traveled across the country to give motivational speeches to over 200,000 GE employees. His many speeches, which he wrote himself, were nonpartisan but carried a conservative, pro-business message. He was influenced by Lemuel Boulware, a senior GE executive. Boulware, known for his tough stance against unions and his innovative strategies to win over workers, championed the core tenets of modern American conservatism: free markets, anti-communism, lower taxes, and limited government. Eager for a larger stage, but not allowed to enter politics by GE, he quit and formally registered as a Republican. He often said, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The party left me." When the legislation that would become Medicare was introduced in 1961, he created a recording for the American Medical Association, AMA, warning that such legislation would mean the end of freedom in America. Reagan said that if his listeners did not write letters to prevent it, we will awake to find that we have socialism. And if you don't do this, and if I don't do it, one of these days, you and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children, and our children's children, what it once was like in America when men were free. He also joined the National Rifle Association, NRA, and would become a lifetime member. Reagan gained national attention in his speeches for conservative presidential contender Barry Goldwater in 1964. Speaking for Goldwater, Reagan stressed his belief in the importance of smaller government. He consolidated themes that he had developed in his talks for GE to deliver his famous speech, A Time for Choosing. The Founding Fathers knew a government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they knew when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. So we have come to a time for choosing. You and I are told we must choose between a left or right, but I suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There is only an up or down. Up to man's age-old dream, the maximum of individual freedom consistent with order, or down to the ant heap of totalitarianism. October 27, 1964. This A Time for Choosing speech was not enough to turn around the faltering Goldwater campaign, but it was the key event that established Reagan's national political visibility. Governor of California, 1967–1975. California Republicans were impressed with Reagan's political views and charisma after his Time for Choosing speech, and in late 1965 he announced his campaign for governor in the 1966 election. He defeated former San Francisco Mayor George Christopher in the GOP primary. In Reagan's campaign, he emphasized two main themes: to send the welfare bums back to work, and, in reference to burgeoning anti-war and anti-establishment student protests at the University of California at Berkeley, to clean up the mess at Berkeley. In 1966, Reagan accomplished what both U.S. Senator William F. Knowland in 1958 and former Vice President Richard Nixon in 1962 had attempted to do. He was elected, defeating two-term Governor Pat Brown, and was sworn in on January 2, 1967. In his first term, he froze government hiring and approved tax hikes to balance the budget. Shortly after assuming his gubernatorial term, Reagan tested the 1968 presidential waters as part of a Stop Nixon movement, hoping to cut into Nixon's Southern support and become a compromise candidate if neither Nixon nor second-place candidate Nelson Rockefeller received enough delegates to win on the first ballot at the Republican convention. However, by the time of the convention, Nixon had 692 delegate votes, 25 more than he needed to secure the nomination, followed by Rockefeller with Reagan in third place. Reagan was involved in several high-profile conflicts with the protest movements of the era, including his public criticism of university administrators for tolerating student demonstrations at the University of California, Berkeley campus. On May 15, 1969, during the People's Park protests at the university's campus, the original purpose of which was to discuss the Arab-Israeli conflict, Reagan sent the California Highway Patrol and other officers to quell the protests. This led to an incident that became known as Bloody Thursday, resulting in the death of student James Rector and the blinding of carpenter Alan Blanchard. In addition, 111 police officers were injured in the conflict, including one who was knifed in the chest. Reagan then called out 2,200 state National Guard troops to occupy the city of Berkeley for 2 weeks to crack down on the protesters. The Guard remained in Berkeley for 17 days, camping in People's Park, and demonstrations subsided as the university removed cordoned-off fencing and placed all development plans for People's Park on hold. 1 year after Bloody Thursday, Reagan responded to questions about campus protest movements saying, "If it takes a bloodbath, let's get it over with. No more appeasement." When the Symbionese Liberation Army kidnapped Patty Hearst in Berkeley and demanded the distribution of food to the poor, Reagan joked to a group of political aides about a botulism outbreak contaminating the food. Early in 1967, the national debate on abortion was starting to gain traction. In the early stages of the debate, Democratic California State Senator Anthony C. Beilenson introduced the Therapeutic Abortion Act in an effort to reduce the number of backroom abortions performed in California. The state legislature sent the bill to Reagan's desk where, after many days of indecision, he signed it on June 14, 1967. About 2 million abortions would be performed as a result, mostly because of a provision in the bill allowing abortions for the well-being of the mother. Reagan had been in office for only 4 months when he signed the bill, and later stated that had he been more experienced as governor, he would not have signed it. After he recognized what he called the consequences of the bill, he announced that he was pro-life. He maintained that position later in his political career, writing extensively about abortion. In 1967, Reagan signed the Mulford Act, which repealed a law allowing public carrying of loaded firearms, becoming California Penal Code 12,031 and 171, c. The bill, which was named after Republican Assemblyman Don Mulford, garnered national attention after the Black Panthers marched bearing arms upon the California state capitol to protest it. Despite an unsuccessful attempt to force a recall election on Reagan in 1968, he was re-elected governor in 1970, defeating Big Daddy Jesse M. Unruh. He chose not to seek a third term in the following election cycle. One of Reagan's greatest frustrations in office was the issue of capital punishment, which he strongly supported. His efforts to enforce the state's laws in this area were thwarted when the Supreme Court of California issued its People v. Anderson decision, which invalidated all death sentences issued in California before 1972, though the decision was later overturned by a constitutional amendment. The only execution during Reagan's governorship was on April 12, 1967, when Aaron Mitchell's sentence was carried out by the state in San Quintin's gas chamber. When Reagan was governor in 1969, he signed the Family Law Act, which was an amalgam of 2 bills that had been written and revised by the California state legislature over more than 2 years. It became the first no-fault divorce legislation in the United States. Reagan's terms as governor helped to shape the policies he would pursue in his later political career as president. By campaigning on a platform of sending the welfare bums back to work, he spoke out against the idea of the welfare state. He also strongly advocated the Republican ideal of less government regulation of the economy, including that of undue federal taxation. Reagan did not seek re-election to a third term as governor in 1974. He was succeeded by the Secretary of State, Democrat Jerry Brown, who took office on January 6, 1975. 1976 Presidential Campaign. In 1976, Reagan challenged incumbent President Gerald Ford in a bid to become the Republican Party's candidate for president. Reagan soon established himself as the conservative candidate with the support of like-minded organizations such as the American Conservative Union, which became key components of his political base, while Ford was considered a more moderate Republican. Reagan's campaign relied on a strategy crafted by campaign manager John Sears of winning a few primaries early to damage the inevitability of Ford's likely nomination. Reagan won North Carolina, Texas, and California, but the strategy failed, as he ended up losing New Hampshire, Florida, and his native Illinois. The Texas campaign lent renewed hope to Reagan, when he swept all 96 delegates chosen in the May 1 primary, with 4 more awaiting at the state convention. Much of the credit for that victory came from the work of 3 CO chairmen, including Ernest Angelo, the mayor of Midland, and Ray Barnhart of Houston, whom Reagan as president would appoint in 1981 as director of the Federal Highway Administration. However, as the GOP convention neared, Ford appeared close to victory. Acknowledging his party's moderate wing, Reagan chose moderate Senator Richard Schweiker of Pennsylvania as his running mate if nominated. Nonetheless, Ford prevailed with 1,187 delegates to Reagan's 1,070. Ford would go on to lose the 1976 presidential election to the Democratic nominee, Jimmy Carter. Reagan's concession speech emphasized the dangers of nuclear war and the threat posed by the Soviet Union. Though he lost the nomination, he received 307 write-in votes in New Hampshire, 388 votes as an independent on Wyoming's ballot, and a single electoral vote from a faithless elector in the November election from the state of Washington, which Ford had won over Democratic challenger Jimmy Carter. After the campaign, Reagan remained in the public debate with the Ronald Reagan Radio Commentary Series and his Political Action Committee, Citizens for the Republic, which was later revived in Alexandria, Virginia, in 2009 by the Reagan biographer Craig Shirley. 1980 Presidential Campaign. The 1980 presidential election featured Reagan against incumbent President Jimmy Carter and was conducted amid a multitude of domestic concerns as well as the ongoing Iran hostage crisis. Reagan's campaign stressed some of his fundamental principles: lower taxes to stimulate the economy, less government interference in people's lives, states' rights, and a strong national defense. Reagan launched his campaign by declaring, "I believe in states' rights." After receiving, defenders of the effort point to success in reducing rates of adolescent drug use. Marijuana use among high school seniors declined from 33% in 1980 to 12% in 1991. First Lady Nancy Reagan made the war on drugs her main priority by founding the Just Say No Drug Awareness Campaign, which aimed to discourage children and teenagers from engaging in recreational drug use by offering various ways of saying no. Nancy Reagan traveled to 65 cities in 33 states, raising awareness about the dangers of drugs including alcohol. Response to AIDS epidemic. According to AIDS activist organizations such as ACT UP, the Reagan administration largely ignored the AIDS crisis, which began to unfold in the United States in 1981, the same year Reagan took office. They also claim AIDS research was chronically underfunded during Reagan's administration, and requests for more funding by doctors at the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, were routinely denied. By the time President Reagan had given his first prepared speech on the epidemic, some 6 years into his presidency, 36,058 Americans had been diagnosed with AIDS and 20,849 had died of it. By the end of 1989, the year Reagan left office, 115,786 people had been diagnosed with AIDS in the United States, and more than 70,000 of them had died of it. Others, however, point out that federal funding for AIDS-related programs was $2.3 billion in 1989 and nearly $6 billion total over his presidency. In a September 1985 press conference, Reagan said, "This is a top priority with us, there's no question about the seriousness of this and the need to find an answer." Libya bombing. Relations between Libya and the United States under President Reagan were continually contentious, beginning with the Gulf of Sidra incident in 1981. By 1982, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was considered by the CIA to be, along with USSR leader Leonid Brezhnev and Cuban leader Fidel Castro, part of a group known as the Unholy Trinity and was also labeled as our international public enemy number one by a CIA official. These tensions were later revived in early April 1986, when a bomb exploded in a Berlin discotheque, resulting in the injury of 63 American military personnel and death of one serviceman. Stating that there was irrefutable proof that Libya had directed the terrorist bombing, Reagan authorized the use of force against the country. In the late evening of April 15, 1986, the United States launched a series of airstrikes on ground targets in Libya. Britain's Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, allowed the U.S. Air Force to use Britain's air bases to launch the attack, on the justification that the UK was supporting America's right to self-defense under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. The attack was designed to halt Gaddafi's ability to export terrorism, offering him incentives and reasons to alter his criminal behavior. The president addressed the nation from the Oval Office after the attacks had commenced, stating, "When our citizens are attacked or abused anywhere in the world on the direct orders of hostile regimes, we will respond so long as I'm in this office." The attack was condemned by many countries. By a vote of 79 in favor to 28 against with 33 abstentions, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 4138 which condemns the military attack perpetrated against the Socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya on April 15, 1986, which constitutes a violation of the Charter of the United Nations and of international law. Immigration. Reagan signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act in 1986. The act made it illegal to knowingly hire or recruit illegal immigrants, required employers to attest to their employees' immigration status, and granted amnesty to approximately 3 million illegal immigrants who entered the United States before January 1, 1982, and had lived in the country continuously. Critics argue that the employer sanctions were without teeth and failed to stem illegal immigration. Upon signing the act at a ceremony held beside the newly refurbished Statue of Liberty, Reagan said, "The legalization provisions in this act will go far to improve the lives of a class of individuals who now must hide in the shadows, without access to many of the benefits of a free and open society. Very soon many of these men and women will be able to step into the sunlight and, ultimately, if they choose, they may become Americans." Reagan also said, "The employer sanctions program is the keystone and major element. It will remove the incentive for illegal immigration by eliminating the job opportunities which draw illegal aliens here." Iran-Contra affair. In 1986, the Iran-Contra affair became a problem for the administration stemming from the use of proceeds from covered arms sales to Iran during the Iran-Iraq War to fund the Contra rebels fighting against the government in Nicaragua, which had been specifically outlawed by an act of Congress. The affair became a political scandal in the United States during the 1980s. The International Court of Justice, whose jurisdiction to decide the case was disputed by the United States, ruled that the United States had violated international law and breached treaties in Nicaragua in various ways. President Reagan professed that he was unaware of the plot's existence. He opened his own investigation and appointed 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, John Tower, Brent Scowcroft, and Edmund Muskie, known as the Tower Commission, to investigate the scandal. The commission could not find direct evidence that Reagan had prior knowledge of the program, but criticized him heavily for his disengagement from managing his staff, making the diversion of funds possible. A separate report by Congress concluded that if the president did not know what his national security advisors were doing, he should have. Reagan's popularity declined from 67% to 46% in less than a week, the greatest and quickest decline ever for a president. The scandal resulted in 14 indictments within Reagan's staff, and 11 convictions. Many Central Americans criticize Reagan for his support of the Contras, calling him an anti-communist zealot, blinded to human rights abuses, while others say he saved Central America. Daniel Ortega, Sandinistan and president of Nicaragua, said that he hoped God would forgive Reagan for his dirty war against Nicaragua. End of the Cold War. Until the early 1980s, the United States had relied on the qualitative superiority of its weapons to essentially frighten the Soviets, but the gap had been narrowed. Although the Soviet Union did not accelerate military spending after President Reagan's military buildup, their large military expenses, in combination with collectivized agriculture and inefficient planned manufacturing, were a heavy burden for the Soviet economy. At the same time, Saudi Arabia increased oil production, which resulted in a drop of oil prices in 1985 to one-third of the previous level. Oil was the main source of Soviet export revenues. These factors contributed to a stagnant Soviet economy during Gorbachev's tenure. Reagan recognized the change in the direction of the Soviet leadership with Mikhail Gorbachev, and shifted to diplomacy, with a view to encourage the Soviet leader to pursue substantial arms agreements. Reagan's personal mission was to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons, which he regarded as totally irrational, totally inhumane, good for nothing but killing, possibly destructive of life on Earth and civilization. He was able to start discussions on nuclear disarmament with General Secretary Gorbachev. Gorbachev and Reagan held 4 summit conferences between 1985 and 1988, the first in Geneva, Switzerland, the second in Reykjavik, Iceland, the third in Washington, D.C., and the fourth in Moscow. Reagan believed that if he could persuade the Soviets to allow for more democracy and free speech, this would lead to reform and the end of communism. Speaking at the Berlin Wall on June 12, 1987, Reagan challenged Gorbachev to go further, saying, "General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Before Gorbachev's visit to Washington, D.C., for the third summit in 1987, the Soviet leader announced his intention to pursue significant arms agreements. The timing of the announcement led Western diplomats to contend that Gorbachev was offering major concessions to the United States on the levels of conventional forces, nuclear weapons, and policy in Eastern Europe. He and Reagan signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, INF Treaty, at the White House, which eliminated an entire class of nuclear weapons. The two leaders laid the framework for the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or START-I. Reagan insisted that the name of the treaty be changed from Strategic Arms Limitation Talks to Strategic Arms Reduction Talks. When Reagan visited Moscow for the fourth summit in 1988, he was viewed as a celebrity by the Soviets. A journalist asked the president if he still considered the Soviet Union the evil empire. "No," he replied, "I was talking about another time, another era." At Gorbachev's request, Reagan gave a speech on free markets at the Moscow State University. In his autobiography, An American Life, Reagan expressed his optimism about the new direction that they charted and his warm feelings for Gorbachev. In November 1989, 10 months after Reagan left office, the Berlin Wall was opened. The Cold War was unofficially declared over at the Malta Summit on December 3, 1989, and 2 years later, the Soviet Union collapsed. Health. Early in his presidency, Reagan started wearing a custom-made, technologically advanced hearing aid, first in his right ear and later in his left ear as well. His decision to go public in 1983 regarding his wearing the small, audio-amplifying device boosted their sales. On July 13, 1985, Reagan underwent surgery at Bethesda Naval Hospital to remove cancerous polyps from his colon. He relinquished presidential power to the vice president for 8 hours in a similar procedure as outlined in the 25th Amendment, which he specifically avoided invoking. The surgery lasted just under 3 hours and was successful. Reagan resumed the powers of the presidency later that day. In August of that year, he underwent an operation to remove skin cancer cells from his nose. In October, more skin cancer cells were detected on his nose and removed. In January 1987, Reagan underwent surgery for an enlarged prostate that caused further worries about his health. No cancerous growths were found and he was not sedated during the operation. In July of that year, aged 76, he underwent a third skin cancer operation on his nose. On January 7, 1989, Reagan underwent surgery at Walter Reed Army Medical Center to repair a Dupuytren's contracture of the ring finger of his left hand. The surgery lasted for more than 3 hours and was performed under regional anesthesia. This procedure was done just 13 days before he left office. For this reason, he had a hand and finger bandage the day of his farewell speech and the day of the inauguration of George H. W. Bush. Judiciary. During his 1980 campaign, Reagan pledged that he would appoint the first female Supreme Court justice if given the opportunity. That opportunity came in his first year in office when he nominated Sandra Day O'Connor to fill the vacancy created by the retirement of Justice Potter Stewart. In his second term, Reagan elevated William Rehnquist to succeed Warren E. Burger as Chief Justice, and named Antonin Scalia to fill the vacant seat. Reagan nominated conservative jurist Robert Bork to the High Court in 1987. Senator Ted Kennedy, a Democrat of Massachusetts, strongly condemned Bork, and great controversy ensued. Bork's nomination was rejected 58-42. Reagan then nominated Douglas Ginsburg, but Ginsburg withdrew his name from consideration after coming under fire for his cannabis use. Anthony Kennedy was eventually confirmed in his place. Along with his 3 Supreme Court appointments, Reagan appointed 83 judges to the United States Courts of Appeals, and 290 judges to the United States District Courts. Reagan also nominated Vaughn Walker, who would later be revealed to be the earliest known gay federal judge, to the United States District Court for the Central District of California. However, the nomination stalled in the Senate, and Walker was not confirmed until he was renominated by Reagan's successor, George H. W. Bush. Early in his tenure, Reagan appointed Clarence M. Pendleton, Jr., of San Diego as the first African American to chair the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Pendleton tried to steer the commission into a conservative direction in line with Reagan's views on social and civil rights policy during his tenure from 1981 until his sudden death in 1988. Pendleton soon aroused the ire of many civil rights advocates and feminists when he ridiculed the comparable Worth proposal as being Looney Tunes. In 1984, Reagan commuted the 18-year sentence of former Louisiana Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry Gil Dozier, a Democrat from Baton Rouge, to the time served for violations of both the Hobbs and the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Acts. On September 23, 1980, the United States District Court for the Middle District of Louisiana convicted Dozier of extortion and racketeering when he pushed companies doing business with his department to make campaign contributions on his behalf. Reagan determined that the 18-year sentence was excessive compared to what other political figures in similar circumstances had been receiving. Post-presidency, 1989-2004. Public speaking. After leaving office in 1989, the Reagans purchased a home in Bel Air, Los Angeles, in addition to the Reagan Ranch in Santa Barbara. They regularly attended Bel Air Church and occasionally made appearances on behalf of the Republican Party. Reagan delivered a well-received speech at the 1992 Republican National Convention. Previously, on November 4, 1991, the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library was dedicated and opened to the public. At the dedication ceremonies, 5 presidents were in attendance, as well as 6 first ladies, marking the first time that 5 presidents were gathered in the same location. Reagan continued publicly to speak in favor of a line-item veto, the Brady Bill, a constitutional amendment requiring a balanced budget, and the repeal of the 22nd Amendment, which prohibits anyone from serving more than 2 terms as president. In 1992, Reagan established the Ronald Reagan Freedom Award with the newly formed Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation. His final public speech was on February 3, 1994, during a tribute to him in Washington, D.C., and his last major public appearance was at the funeral of Richard Nixon on April 27, 1994. Assault. On April 13, 1992, Reagan was assaulted by an anti-nuclear protester during a luncheon speech while accepting an award from the National Association of Broadcasters in Las Vegas. The protester, 41-year-old Richard Paul Springer, smashed a 2-foot-high, 60 centimeters, 30-pound, 13.5 kilograms, crystal statue of an eagle that the broadcasters had given the former president. Flying shards of glass hit Reagan, but he was not injured. Using media credentials, Springer intended to announce government plans for an underground nuclear weapons test in the Nevada desert the following day. Springer was the founder of an anti-nuclear group called the 100th Monkey. Following his arrest on assault charges, a Secret Service spokesman could not explain how Springer got past the federal agents who guarded Reagan's life at all times. Later, Springer pled guilty to reduced charges and said he hadn't meant to hurt Reagan through his actions. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor federal charge of interfering with the Secret Service, but other felony charges of assault and resisting officers were dropped. Alzheimer's disease. Announcement and reaction, 1994. In August 1994, at the age of 83, Reagan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, an incurable neurological disorder which destroys brain cells and ultimately causes death. In November, he informed the nation through a handwritten letter, writing in part, "I have recently been told that I am one of the millions of Americans who will be afflicted with Alzheimer's disease. At the moment I feel just fine. I intend to live the remainder of the years God gives me on this earth doing the things I have always done. I now begin the journey that will lead me into the sunset of my life. I know that for America there will always be a bright dawn ahead. Thank you, my friends. May God always bless you." After his diagnosis, letters of support from well-wishers poured into his California home. But there was also speculation over how long Reagan had demonstrated symptoms of mental degeneration. Not long after the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, at a reception for mayors, Reagan greeted his Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Samuel Pierce in 1981 by saying, "How are you, Mr. Mayor? How are things in your city?" Former CBS White House correspondent Leslie Stahl recounted that, in her final meeting with the president in 1986, Reagan did not seem to know who Stahl was, and that she came close to reporting that Reagan was senile, but at the end of the meeting, Reagan had regained his alertness. However, Dr. Lawrence K. Altman, a physician employed as a reporter for the New York Times, noted that the line between mere forgetfulness and the beginning of Alzheimer's can be fuzzy, and all four of Reagan's White House doctors said that they saw no evidence of Alzheimer's while he was president. Dr. John E. Hutton, Reagan's primary physician from 1984 to 1989, said the president absolutely did not show any signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. His former chief of staff James Baker considered ludicrous the idea that Reagan slept during cabinet meetings. Other staff members, former aides, and friends said they saw no indication of Alzheimer's while he was president. Reagan did experience occasional memory lapses, though, especially with names. Reagan's doctors say that he only began exhibiting overt symptoms of the illness in late 1992 or 1993, several years after he had left office. For example, Reagan repeated a toast to Margaret Thatcher, with identical words and gestures, at his 82nd birthday party on February 6, 1993. Complicating the picture, Reagan suffered an episode of head trauma in July 1989, 5 years before his diagnosis. After being thrown from a horse in Mexico, a subdural hematoma was found and surgically treated later in the year. Nancy Reagan, citing what doctors told her, asserted that her husband's 1989 fall hastened the onset of Alzheimer's disease, although acute brain injury has not been conclusively proven to accelerate Alzheimer's or dementia. Reagan's one-time physician Daniel Ruga has said it is possible, but not certain, that the horse accident affected the course of Reagan's memory. Progression, 1994–2004. As the years went on, the disease slowly destroyed Reagan's mental capacity. He was only able to recognize a few people, including his wife, Nancy. He remained active, however. He took walks through parks near his home and on beaches, played golf regularly, and until 1999 he often went to his office in nearby Century City. Reagan suffered a fall at his Bel Air home on January 13, 2001, resulting in a broken hip. The fracture was repaired the following day and the 89-year-old Reagan returned home later that week, although he faced difficult physical therapy at home. On February 6, 2001, Reagan reached the age of 90, becoming the third former president to do so, the other two being John Adams and Herbert Hoover, with Gerald Ford, George H. W. Bush and Jimmy Carter later reaching 90. Reagan's public appearances became much less frequent with the progression of the disease, and as a result, his family decided that he would live in quiet semi-isolation with his wife Nancy. Nancy Reagan told CNN's Larry King in 2001 that very few visitors were allowed to see her husband because she felt that Ronnie would want people to remember him as he was. After her husband's diagnosis and death, Nancy Reagan became a stem cell research advocate, urging Congress and President George W. Bush to support federal funding for embryonic stem cell research, something Bush opposed. In 2009, she praised President Barack Obama for lifting restrictions on such research. Nancy Reagan said that she believed it could lead to a cure for Alzheimer's. Death and funeral. Reagan died of pneumonia, complicated by Alzheimer's disease, at his home in the Bel Air district of Los Angeles, California, on the afternoon of June 5, 2004. A short time after his death, Nancy Reagan released a statement saying, "My family and I would like the world to know that President Ronald Reagan has died after 10 years of Alzheimer's disease at 93 years of age. We appreciate everyone's prayers." President George W. Bush declared June 11 a national day of mourning, and international tributes came in from around the world. Reagan's body was taken to the Kingsley and Gates Funeral Home in Santa Monica, California later in the day, where well-wishers paid tribute by laying flowers and American flags in the grass. On June 7, his body was removed and taken to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, where a brief family funeral was held conducted by Pastor Michael Wenning. His body lay in repose in the library lobby until June 9. Over 100,000 people viewed the coffin. On June 9, Reagan's body was flown to Washington, D.C., where he became the 10th U.S. president to lie in state. In 34 hours, 104,684 people filed past the coffin. On June 11, a state funeral was conducted in the Washington National Cathedral, and presided over by President George W. Bush. Eulogies were given by former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, and both former President George H. W. Bush and President George W. Bush. Also in attendance were Mikhail Gorbachev, and many world leaders, including British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Prince Charles, representing his mother Queen Elizabeth II, German Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder, Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, and interim Presidents Hamid Karzai of Afghanistan, and Ghazi al-Ya'ar of Iraq. After the funeral, the Reagan entourage was flown back to the Ronald W. Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California, where another service was held, and President Reagan was interred. At the time of his death, Reagan was the longest-lived president in U.S. history, having lived 93 years and 120 days, 2 years, 8 months and 23 days longer than John Adams, whose record he surpassed. He is now the third longest-lived president, after George H. W. Bush and Gerald Ford. He was the first U.S. president to die in the 21st century, and his was the first state funeral in the United States since that of President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1973. His burial site is inscribed with the words he delivered at the opening of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library: "I know in my heart that man is good, that what is right will always eventually triumph, and that there is purpose and worth to each and every life." Legacy. Since Reagan left office in 1989, substantial debate has occurred among scholars, historians, and the general public surrounding his legacy. Supporters have pointed to a more efficient and prosperous economy as a result of Reagan's economic policies, foreign policy triumphs including a peaceful end to the Cold War, and a restoration of American pride and morale. Proponents also argue Reagan restored faith in the American dream with his unabated and passionate love for the United States, after a decline in American confidence and self-respect under Jimmy Carter's perceived weak leadership, particularly during the Iran hostage crisis, as well as his gloomy, dreary outlook for the future of the United States during the 1980 election. Critics contend that Reagan's economic policies resulted in rising budget deficits, a wider gap in wealth, and an increase in homelessness, and that the Iran-Contra affair lowered American credibility. Opinions of Reagan's legacy among the country's leading policymakers and journalists differ as well. Edwin Foilner, president of the Heritage Foundation, said that Reagan helped create a safer, freer world, and said of his economic policies, "He took in America suffering from malaise, and made its citizens believe again in their destiny." However, Mark Weisbrot, CO director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, contended that Reagan's economic policies were mostly a failure, while Howard Kurtz of The Washington Post opined that Reagan was a far more controversial figure in his time than the largely gushing obits on television would suggest. Despite the continuing debate surrounding his legacy, many conservative and liberal scholars agree that Reagan has been the most influential president since Franklin D. Roosevelt, leaving his imprint on American politics, diplomacy, culture, and economics through his effective communication, dedicated patriotism, and pragmatic compromising. Since he left office, historians have reached a consensus, as summarized by British historian M. J. Heal, who finds that scholars now concur that Reagan rehabilitated conservatism, turned the nation to the right, practiced a considerably pragmatic conservatism that balanced ideology and the constraints of politics, revived faith in the presidency and in American exceptionalism, and contributed to victory in the Cold War. Cold War. The Cold War was a major political, economic, and military endeavor for over 4 decades, but the confrontation between the two superpowers had decreased dramatically by the end of Reagan's presidency. The significance of Reagan's role in ending the Cold War has spurred contentious and opinionated debate. That Reagan played a role in contributing to the downfall of the Soviet Union is agreed, but the extent of this role is continuously debated, with many believing that Reagan's defense policies, economic policies, military policies, and hard-line rhetoric against the Soviet Union and communism, as well as summits with General Secretary Gorbachev, played a significant part in ending the Cold War. He was first among post-World War II presidents to put into practice the concept that the Soviet Union could be defeated rather than simply negotiated with, a post-détente strategy, a conviction that was vindicated by Gennady Gerasimov, the foreign ministry spokesman under Gorbachev, who said that the Strategic Defense Initiative was very successful blackmail. The Soviet economy couldn't endure such competition. Reagan's aggressive rhetoric toward the USSR had mixed effects. Jeffrey W. Knopf observes that being labeled evil probably made no difference to the Soviets but gave encouragement to the East European citizens opposed to communism. General Secretary Gorbachev said of his former rival's Cold War role, "A man who was instrumental in bringing about the end of the Cold War," and deemed him a great president. Gorbachev does not acknowledge a win or loss in the war, but rather a peaceful end. He said he was not intimidated by Reagan's harsh rhetoric. Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, said of Reagan, he warned that the Soviet Union had an insatiable drive for military power, but he also sensed it was being eaten away by systemic failures impossible to reform. She later said, Ronald Reagan had a higher claim than any other leader to have won the Cold War for liberty, and he did it without a shot being fired. Said Brian Mulroney, former Prime Minister of Canada, he enters history as a strong and dramatic player. Former President Lech Walesa of Poland acknowledged, Reagan was one of the world leaders who made a major contribution to communism's collapse. That Reagan had little or no effect in ending the Cold War is argued with equal weight, that communism's internal weakness had become apparent, and the Soviet Union would have collapsed in the end regardless of who was in power. President Harry S. Truman's policy of containment is also regarded as a force behind the fall of the USSR, and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan undermined the Soviet system itself. Domestic and political legacy. Reagan reshaped the Republican Party, led the modern conservative movement, and altered the political dynamic of the United States. More men voted Republican under Reagan, and Reagan tapped into religious voters. The so-called Reagan Democrats were a result of his presidency. After leaving office, Reagan became an iconic influence within the Republican Party. His policies and beliefs have been frequently invoked by Republican presidential candidates since 1988. The 2008 Republican presidential candidates were no exception, for they aimed to liken themselves to him during the primary debates, even imitating his campaign strategies. Republican nominee John McCain frequently said that he came to office as a foot soldier in the Reagan Revolution. Reagan's most famous statement regarding the role of smaller government was that government is not a solution to our problem, government is the problem. Reagan has become an iconic figure in the Republican Party. Praise for his accomplishments were part of the standard GOP rhetoric a quarter century after his retirement. Washington Post reporter Carl.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.